Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host FAIZA NAQVI with a prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy and blessed. May Allah hasten the appearance of Imam of our time and make us true companion of our Imam, inshallah. Ameen. Today the topic we are about to discuss is related to education, as we were discussing some practical steps regarding homeschooling last week, and they were obviously left, and we were supposed to discuss them in further details, because education is a kind of environment we need to create for a child where he can learn as well as enjoy and feel excited about learning. And this is something we need to create an atmosphere for, and it has to be education should be and has to be like a lifestyle, so where a child would love to learn and feel excited about and feel relaxed and in a peaceful environment where they can challenge themselves and ask questions and see how we can from where they can get these answers and all that. So if for creating that environment, we really need some practical steps, and we need help from professionals as well, obviously, which is available. There are so many resources available online, and sometimes parents who are supposed to do this kind of homeschooling, they are under so much pressure and frustration that what to do, where to start from, and maybe there are so many pressures they have on in their mind about it. So we will discuss this in further detail with our prestigious guest, and we'll see how we can make it fun and make a peaceful, positive learning environment in which a child could have a learning attitude and is excited about learning as well. So we do have brother Sayyid Mohsin Abbas with us, who is journalist, researcher and a broadcaster, and mashallah, he's always with us, and he's doing a great job in these fields as well, in order to inquire about these things and learn about these things. Thank you so much, Mohsin Bhai, for joining us. And we do have brother Sayyid Mohsin Sayyid Raza Abbas, and he is also educationist and have 17 years experience in education, field of education. I welcome you both on the show. Thank you so much for joining in. First of all, Mohsin Bhai, I would like to start from you. If you can precisely share some steps which are especially the children who are going to learn in West, for example. If I am a mother of a young child or a teenager, what steps do I have to follow, especially legally, obviously, what kind of pressures we have, and what sort of education, home education we can do if we have to?
Well, I think, of course, there is a compliance to government rules and regulations here in the UK. All governments have rules about education. Even if you're going to teach at home, clearly those rules have to be adhered to. You can go onto the British government's own websites, just Google homeschooling and UK government rules. It'll lead you into a whole load of information, particularly the government websites themselves. They'll tell you what their rules and regulations are regarding homeschooling. You also have something people don't know. You can do a combination of homeschooling and mainstream schooling. That is possible. I don't know how many people do it, but I've come across it recently that you can almost come to an agreement with your own schools as well, actually, that you want to part-time homeschool, but also you want them to have some of the mainstream school education. That I don't know how that would work, but it's something to certainly also consider. So the government did here in the UK a few years ago start making noises about clamping down on homeschooling. I rather suspect it was because partly they know that Muslim parents and people with spiritual values and beliefs are very worried about the way neoliberal, secular Western education is evolving. Of course, there's been everything from very young age sex education, which has caused a lot of concern. There's been the LGBT, the active pushing of LGBT. There's the whole notions around gender fluidity and educating children about that, which has been problematic for the beliefs of a lot of people. Now, of course, Britain now has probably 70% of its population which is not believing at all. They're not Christians, and they're not Muslims, nothing. In fact, Islam is the second biggest religion here, but Christianity is very much dwindling. So that's given the opportunity for kind of new sets of thinking to emerge in society, and politicians pandering to that kind of new environment of a kind of a what I call the religion of secular neoliberalism, because it is a religion. It is in all but name. It has values, it has doctrines, it has a kind of a clergy who advocate for it on the televisions. They have institutions and systems that push it. They have lobby groups in political circles that also push this, and they also export it. They'll export it to Pakistan. They'll export it to to wherever they can to essentially promote this new set of 21st century secular neoliberal values, and they are very evangelical about it, and this is where education, as we said in the last program, becomes very political. And of course, so what they're doing in these schools, and what worries a lot of faith-based people, particularly, or just people with traditional values, it worries them that the impact on children from a very early age will be detrimental to their spiritual and their holistic growth as strong, confident, and decent human beings. The values of secular neoliberalism, whilst they look quite shiny, and this is why I'll dwell on this a little bit in terms of its danger to education, is that the ideology they push is very much about individualism. It's about me, a kind of a me culture which glorifies the individual at the expense of his family, at the expense of perhaps people, his parents, at the expense of the society, probably even at the expense of his religious, community. And so therefore, it's not a benign movement. It's a very active movement that doesn't like religion, doesn't like prophetic values in all of their shape and form. So therefore, I consider it a threat. I consider it a threat to the prophetic worldview and to the prophetic educational value systems which we're very clear about. So there is, I think, a silent war going on. There's a sort of a secret war. They don't want to declare themselves as an educational body or movement, but throughout the educational system, whether it's your private companies like Pearson's or Edison Learning, or any of the big educating private education sector bodies which produce books, curriculums, which go into schools as well and roll all sorts of material out and produce content for those schools. Also, the schools themselves, the teachers, are increasingly handcuffed to government edicts and legislature and what they should or shouldn't be doing. That's why homeschooling, of course, becomes far more important because there is a kind of war, I think, going on within mainstream education now as to where it's going to go, and that's why people in the West and the secular West, particularly Muslims, are finding increasingly a need for alternatives. The government obviously, I think, partly got worried about that and started exploring how they could shut down or monitor or control or shackle homeschoolers as well. They've not been able to do it fully, but that's something I think that they will press ahead with. They will continue to do that. It may mean that within your homeschooling, they eventually legislate to say you must teach LGBT there as well. You must do the things they do in school. I don't know. They may even try to restrict homeschooling by putting charges on, or there are ways that they could come up with to make homeschooling difficult. But at the moment, we have the opportunity. Looking at what the challenges are, individuals are made It's made very hard for individual families to actually homeschool, because you really need a very strong income, probably in the 50, 60, 70,000 pound range per annum, in order to be able to allow your wife to stay at home, for instance, if you were a man, or vice versa, whatever they want to do, and therefore afford to pay for all your other expenses and to educate your child at home, have a fully dedicated person at home who does that. The system is also indirectly destroying our chance to do this by economically squeezing us even more. We know what's going on economically now, that they're tightening everybody to that point. That's another actual indirect way of controlling us and stopping our freedom. Nonetheless, those who can do it, I mean, it's not impossible. You can get, you've got possibilities of working together as small family units in a neighborhood, for instance. You could circumvent that, where you make systems, and we talked about creating hubs in community centres last time as well. I really do think there has to be support networks for people who want to go into homeschooling. I think you could do it on your own, and those who could afford it. But if you can't, then we ought to be looking as communities at ways in which we can facilitate even the people who can't afford it, to see how we can build structures and little units, and they have to be local, because it's got to be within a 2 or 3 mile radius, so you can actually help each other and support, and that can be done. So those are the practical challenges that are there. I'll come on to content and what we should teach and how we should teach it, perhaps as the program goes on. But I'd say initially, knowing your rights, knowing the laws, knowing other people that are doing it, studying and researching how they've done it, the successful models, best practice that is out there, whether it's Muslims or non-Muslims, you should do your homework around that, and to link into those people, to learn what can be done. And then also, of course, you have to taper things for your own child's needs and what he likes, and what he or she likes, to be able to sort of be co-creatively developing programs with them based on their skills and their knowledge and their ability and their speed at which they can adopt things. I mean, that would vary very much individual to individual. At the same time, you can still use the curriculum that mainstream education has, as I said, and you can adopt large chunks of that, so that you also have got a kind of a measure of where the government or the mainstream education on maths, on science, on English, where they expect you to be. And you can kind of keep them up to date with that, so they're up with it. But that's opens up several issues that we could perhaps open up and discuss further, and certainly content I haven't touched on at all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mohsin Bhai, for explaining some kind of dangers and threats we are having or maybe having in future. So, Reza Bhai, I would ask you what practical steps you were about to share last week when we left, and what are your thoughts? Obviously, you have experienced this homeschooling as well, and you have been trying different models of teaching as well. So, what threats do you see in our country, or any kind of obstacles or problems along with the steps, if you can share some?
Ji, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Thank you very much. First, I would like to reiterate that any homeschooling model developed in any part of the world should be very much related to the context in which it is being developed. As my learned colleague was pointing out, that obviously in the whole world there is an oppressor group who wants to push their own agenda, and education is the best vehicle to push that agenda. Why we are talking about the alternate models? Because I think that the only solution, the possible solution, could be to decentralize the authority, and this homeschooling sort of a model is what helps you decentralize the authority, because when there is excessive decentralization, one agency or agent or ideology cannot go on pushing itself on the mind of the learners or the individuals. So this could be a very good solution in this scenario as well. And blockchain technology is somewhat the same. when things are highly decentralized. And this homeschooling, the power of this tool, this homeschooling or any alternate sort of model is that the authority is very much decentralized, and the power goes to the people, not to the groups who have their own agenda and they want to push their agenda. Moving on to the practical steps, we ended up discussing the same, but I would like to discuss some of the other points which arose from our today's discussion. So one of the problem is that if we go on having excessive decentralization and individualized sort of studies, what about our communal setups? What about our communal thinking? Would we be able to survive as a society or not? And because there should always be a balance between between an individual and the society. So what I say is that that hub sort of a setup which Mohsin bhai suggested in the last program is a very good idea, because there you can go on developing some projects which the learners, the students have to go and do in groups. Plus, one of the major point is group discussion, because when you are learning on your own, I mean individual sort of a learning, you need at least every week you should have one session of discussing what you have learned, because without discussing that thing you cannot go on developing a good insight or internalize the content which you are studying. After this, I'm coming to those 5 steps which we which were left incomplete in our last program, and I thought that that would act as a teaser for some of our viewers to come to this program as well. The first thing is having complete buy-in of the learners, because the whole concept revolves around freedom. When the whole concept is revolving around freedom, then it is very important that those kids or the parents who want this sort of an educational setting, they should sit together and discuss the thing. And until and unless they don't see that their kids are ready for this thing, and they have a complete buy-in of their kids in this new setting, new educational setting, they should not go for it. Why? Because first thing is to protect their freedom, because if the freedom is not protected, the self won't grow in the way we are looking for. Second is their moral development, because moral development is also done as a result of the free acts done by the individual or the agent. Whenever the individual is doing something with his or her own free will, the result of those acts actually decides whether his morality is going up or down whatsoever. But until and unless he's not doing something with his own free will, there will be no positive outcome expected to come out regarding his behavior management. Iqbal presents the same idea. I refer again to that thing. Iqbal says that the self develops in 2 steps. First step is individualized, when he should be selfish about his own or her own development, and they should develop his or her own self into a very beneficial sort of an individual. And then when he becomes beneficial, the second step comes when he devotes his personality for the betterment of the society. So Iqbal takes it in a longitudinal way. First step is developing his or her own self, and second step is consuming that developed self for the betterment of that of his society. Regarding the freedom and free will, Iqbal says that Khudi is developed as a result of a free act. As long as the individual is not doing free act, I read out some of the verses of Iqbal from here. There is a poem in Bali Jibreel with the name Indian School, Maktab-e-Hindi. Iqbal says that about the self, here have no talk, O bard, because with schools such sermons don't accord. So in schools you should not talk about liberty and freedom, because they are not very much compatible with their environment. Then Iqbal says, much good that birds that trip may not descry, the modes of hawk, its state and rank so high. So the hawk's traits are for hawks, not for the people who are living in the schools, who are being developed or groomed in the schools. So just hide these high stature, sort of high honored sort of attributes from those people. Coming to the concept of freedom, Iqbal says a free man's breath can match a subject year. So even a breath of a free man can match the year-long life of a subject, of a mehkoom, the one with a slavery sort of a thing. So I won't go into the detail of this thing. Whoever is more interested, they can go on the internet and read this poem. The point here is that it is very much important to save the freedom of the learners, because as long as that freedom is not there, they won't be able to build their own world. If we say that we make them slaves and let them do what our ideology is saying, then they have the slave mentality, and they will very easily be captured with by any other ideology which is more which has more glitter than our ideology, or apparently which is more attractive than our ideology. They will very soon be attracted to those ideologies, and they will start blind following those ideologies, like because the reason is us, because we have trained them to blind follow the things. So if we want to break this chain, we have to induce this self sort of a thing in them, so that they go on critically analyzing the things at their own. So, but what about the modern agendas, the 21st century scale? Apparently, they advocate for the same thing. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. It's fine. Keep going. I think so. Now it's stuck a little bit. We can just say if Raza Bhai does appear again. We wait for a moment, like just in case if he comes back. I think so. There's some problem. Mohsin bhai, you can move on, and you can share some like reflection on that. So when Reza bhai will come again, we will discuss it further in detail. So what are your thoughts on some of the points Reza bhai has shared about freedom, free will, and obviously it has to be enjoyable atmosphere in which they can build up, as Reza bhai also suggested, like they should be able to build their own word, in the sense like they could understand who they actually are, what they actually passionate about, or something like that. It's like self-awareness as well. So along with that, how do you see about the content? For example, in the early years of their age, we see that children are always asking why this is happening, what is this, what is that. If we if we speak to a child who is like 4 or 5 years of his age, they are asking very natural questions which are coming from their innate nature, you can say. And as a parent, sometimes I feel like, even personally, I feel it's really sometimes hard to address them properly according to their mental, emotional demands, if we say. So how do you think, when we see at the content what they should be learning and what they shouldn't be learning, if we want to, is it good idea to introduce philosophy, politics and religion at this age? Obviously these are there, even if we acknowledge it or not, but they are still there. So if we want to introduce, if it is a good idea, how would we introduce them? Because philosophy talks about all the things they are asking us regarding what is going on around them and who they are as a person, or whatever you can say. So what are your thoughts on that, about the contents?
Well, up to 7, Imam Ali alayhi salam, as we've said several times, he says teach through play. And modern scientific studies tell us very clearly that children learn 20 times more deeply and more quickly if they're having fun when they're learning. So that puts the onus on us in whatever curriculum we put together, especially for up to 7 years old, to make it really fun, to make it interesting, to make children engage and be playful with them, and to make them almost feel like they're not having to learn, and it's not boring, it's not a tedious thing. We ought to be developing curriculums which combine playfulness and fun to get them to, at the same time, try and learn. That's relatively easier when they're up to 7, because that's instinctively what they do, and the things you have to do are very, very are more basic. But even up to the age of 7, I mean, to be honest with you, a child, even in the womb, has already started forming huge aspects of what they will be in the future, and they're listening even when they're in their mother's womb. So if you play certain ayats, or even if you put classical music on or something, this will all actually be imbibed by the child. So you must recognize that the child is sponging up information at phenomenal rates even then. When they're then being developed from that point onward, everything from the mother's milk, the close, the touch, the whole kind of process has to be very delicate, very softly done, and that kind of all will impact as well. And to be honest with you, by the time they're 7, in fact, the bulk of what their personality is, their character is, their intuitive qualities, they'll already be there. In fact, I would argue that very much who they're going to be is already, the base has already been laid by 7, the way you raise those children. So if you give them a loving environment, if you give them happiness, if you give them kindness and compassion, and if you act and behave in those ways, and you manifest those virtues of the Prophet, then those are the best ways for a child to learn. So not only are you playing and making formal fun learning, but also just the way you behave. Don't swear, don't lie, don't cheat, don't break promises with them, don't be consistent, encourage them, help them be confident, be firm as well when they're doing something wrong. All these traits are messaging justice, kindness, compassion, love, and discipline. They're all being done there. So you're as a parent, if you're dedicating your time, this is why we're quite against the idea of parents completely leaving their children to other people. They need to be given those opportunities. Now from there, from 7 onwards, of course, you can start introducing things to them, because I make programs like this. Honestly, often my little 9-year-old is listening, and he'll come and start telling me about Palestine. He starts telling me what the politics is, because he's been listening. He's caught little bits and bobs here. He knows that he's learning again by listening and watching. And so I found that only 2 weeks ago, he went to his play school, and the kids were asking him about Palestine, and he was the leader. He was the one who knew the most, and he started telling his own fellow 9-year-olds what it was all about and what was going on, what was really going on in Gaza. So you can see there that a child, even at that age, indirectly or directly, can absorb even politics and even political ideas about justice and freedom and liberty. These things can be easily taught to a child. In fact, they should be. And just 2 days ago, he started, for instance, talking about evolution, and started talking about the whole secular version of being anti-creationism and pro-evolution, and then I sort of started questioning him and asking him questions around that, and that engagement around a very important issue made me realize also that unless you engage them directly with Quranic translations, and so literally you have to pick up Surah Fatiha, you have to pick up Surah Baqarah, and you have to start going through it with them. You ought to start putting the themes that are in the Quran can be used as an educational mechanism, because every paragraph, every second paragraph will have a theme, a new theme. Those should give you the ideas of what the child needs in terms of even the history. And he was fascinated, because once we went into that form of curriculum development, it obviously gave him the divine perspective, because you're getting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly engaged within an education scheme. Now this is something which I don't know whether people do it within madrasas or how they teach it there, but I'm finding that works really well for me now in terms of a child's engagement with a divine worldview. You see, if you leave it to the secular neoliberal worldview, they'll teach them the Big Bang. They'll teach them, anti-God theories. They'll teach them that evolution is an absolute fact, whereas it's a theory. It's not a fact. They don't have any actual fixed evidence to say that, any of that is true. Yet they'll turn science into the God if you're not careful. These are some of the issues that, and of course, in terms of behavior and mannerisms, and in terms of making sure that they understand concepts that very important concepts about not being arrogant, about being compassionate, and all those values. To me, that's far more important at those early years. I mean, later we can talk about things. After 7, of course, their skills will come in. They need some absolute skills to be able to function in society. But it's the tools for inquiring, and also giving them hints and ideas of coming from a divine perspective as well, so that their worldview is balanced. They'll get all the secular nonsense from outside, from their peer groups, especially in the West. They'll get it from the internet. They'll get it from YouTube. Your job is to give them a strong alternative perspective as well, which has a divinely inspired, a divinely rooted knowledge base, but not just about rituals and prayers, which is obviously also necessary. You've got to give them that, but don't spend all your time just focusing on namaz and salah and teaching them about fasting and all these things, because they're only one aspect of Islam. You have to also teach them about the fact that the Quran spends most of its time talking about our morality, about justice, about our duties to the planet, about our duties to the environment, our purpose in this world, and what our objectives are, and how we should have the world. You start getting children to have an imagination about how the world should be, and maybe what are the things that are wrong in it. I think this is a whole socio-political and socio-cultural education which they can pick on at a very early age. Don't think that a 6 or 7-year-old can't understand these things. They can, and you ought to introduce it, because if you don't, you leave the vacuum. YouTube, TikTok, and all the other, and even schools and the political education system, they will certainly fill that vacuum of that child, and before you know it, there will be nothing like what you would expect a prophetically inspired child to be.
Yeah, that's beautifully. You explained so many beautiful, points, especially the way we talk about like compassion, kindness, love, and being firm when we are doing something. These are the values, and if we talk about values, and if we talk about the prophetic vision, or for example, prophetic worldview or divine worldview, we can say, if we introduce Allah's name through education, if we introduce those surahs which talks about, for example, ikhlaq and morality. For example, in Surah Hujurat, they always talk about do not swear, do not taunt, do not look into others, matter and stuff like that. So if we pick up those surahs and we discuss them in terms of morality, or for example our environment related duties and stuff like that, there are so many hadiths on that as well. So we can give them a very strong foundation from Najul Balagha, Quran, and obviously prophetic hadiths and life as well, obviously. So Reza bhai, I would ask you to complete rest of the practical steps you were discussing. And one more thing I would like you to discuss a little bit more in detail is that as a parent, obviously, whoever is whether it's mother or the father, they do have lots of pressure if they are doing homeschooling. So if you can a little bit touch upon that pressure as well, because one pressure is like there are so many house chores they have to do, there are so many family chores they have to do, and they have to teach their child, and then they have this pressure as well. If my child is getting enough according to the other, for example, grammar schools or the other way, you understand what I'm trying to say. So these kind of pressures, how as a mother or as a father or as a teacher who is doing homeschooling, they can deal with that pressure as well. So if you can complete your previous points as well. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I apologize. I was thrown out because of some technical glitch. So I continue my talk from the point where it was terminated. So we were talking about that the learner and the parents, they both should be convinced on this homeschooling sort of stuff, on an alternate education sort of stuff if they are doing this. And this is very much in line with the 21st century agenda as well. What they claim apparently is that 21st century skills actually inculcate the skill of being a lifelong learner in the learners. The learners should be on their self regulation sort of a thing, and they should be turned into lifelong learner, which we say that one should learn from the cradle till the grave. So the same thing, they apparently their slogan is the same, and the way is not the conventional schooling, the schooling in which the responsibility is totally shifted to the learner. So the second practical step is when they are convinced for this thing. Second is the planning step phase. I recommend the second phase is the planning phase. The learner should sit down. They should jot down their objectives either from some curriculum document or whatever the document they have. They should jot down their objectives, which should be smart, and then what they should go on making their breakdowns. That because there is a very big controversy about individual learning and this homeschool sort of a learning, that kids will not become structured. I say that the flexibility is there, but the being structured and disciplined is the thing which is at the core of the whole homeschooling. And why I'm saying this is because Iqbal discusses this thing that there are two extremes. One is creativity. For example, if you go on seeing the artist and the scientist, they are very much creative, but they are not disciplined. And the other extreme is being disciplined, but the creativity is not there. For example, you take an example of an army or these sort of things. So now the thing Iqbal argues that there is a central point between both of these where they both are present in their topmost with their topmost value. For example, that point Iqbal says is a self discipline or self determinism. So whenever you structure yourself, you make your plans, and then you go on structuring yourself as per the plans, which obviously take time because we are human beings and we fluctuate in our plans and all those things. We are not robots, but the flexibility should be there that the learners make their plans, and then we as elders should help them to follow those plans and get them more and more structured as the time goes on. Because when the kids start working, they are involved in their thing and they want to increase their productivity. At that moment, they start realizing that it is very important to get ourselves structured. Plus, for those kids who are not at that age and they are in young ages, the home environment, if we keep our home environment scheduled and structured, this helps naturally make them structured. And those kids are usually more structured, they are more disciplined, because not because of the tabligh we have done to them, not because of the riwayat and ayat we have we constantly go on quoting to them, because of the cause and effect relationship. Because when the causes are there, your home is disciplined, your whole life routine is disciplined, they are sleeping at a good time in the evening or night, and then obviously they'll be up by the fajr time. And if they are sleeping, the home routine is very odd. They are sleeping at 2 a.m. and you are expecting them to get up on the fajr time. Obviously, that's not natural. The people like in our age who find it very difficult to sleep, they can go on managing this thing. But the kids who have very fast sort of sleep, they cannot manage. So the point which I secondly reiterate is the planning part. So the kids should plan their learning, make their breakdowns, make their schedules, and those schedules should be made by them. And then it is the duty of us elders that we help them to follow those routines. That we should get them up on that time, keep on motivating them, and all those things. Third step is critical research skills. The learner should have critical research skills, because now what we say in this modern world is that content is everywhere. If you go on the internet, it is an ocean of information, and when you are looking for something, you should be critical about that thing. First, you should have the research skills, to go in a scientific way to find the content or the information you want for your particular sort of a thing. Plus, you should be critical enough to analyze that information, which information would you be accepting and which information you would be rejecting. This is very important skill, because now the world is not, the learning world is not limited to just some books which the learners have to read. Now the information is very vast, and these skills are very important for the learner. And in this point, I would say that discussion with their peers is very important, even with their experts, with their teachers, because whenever the information is there, they should discuss those things with their peers, with their teachers, and then go on accepting and deciding which information would they be accepting and which they would be rejecting. Then comes the fourth one, notes taking skills. Now, this is actually knowledge management. You have you jumped into the ocean of the information. You took the information. You have scrutinized the information. Now, the learning points, you have to manage your own learning as well, because it is not sticking to some of the books or the notebooks that you are creating from your books and with the limited sort of information. Now you have to manage your learning as well. The points which you have learned, the conclusions you have drawn, the deductions you have made. So there should be some, there are some standard formats to manage all those things as well. So notes taking, for example, I personally like the format of Cornell formats. One is the format is a very good format of notes taking. Plus, I recommend kids to make mind maps of their information. Whatever information they are gathering, just go on making mind maps of their information and preserve their information in the form of mind maps for the later consultation. And now the final and the fifth skill is the assessment skill. This skill should not only be limited to the teachers. Now in this modern world, when we are going for alternate models, this skill should be learned by the kids themselves, because the assessment starts from their own, it is their own responsibility. So there are three forms of assessment which I recommend over here. First is the self-assessment. There are some standard tools for the self-assessment. Whenever they are learning something, they should go after finishing the chapter. They should be linked with some nuts to be cracked, and while cracking those nuts, they keep on understanding the gaps in their learnings. The second is the peer assessment. In peer assessment, there is Freeman's technique. In Freeman's technique, you go on explaining the whole thing which you have learned to your peers in the way if they are a layman and you are explaining the whole thing to a layman. And this helps you find the gaps in your learning, and your peer helps you to find the gaps in your learning. You note down the gaps, and later on you reinforce those gaps. And third is the expert assessment. And obviously the resource person or the teacher or the hubs which we were discussing, those could have the possibility of those experts, maybe in an Islamic center or a masjid or whatsoever the place is where they gather on some scheduled time on weekly basis or monthly basis, and they can the learners go on sharing their information with the experts. The experts may design some tests for them, and so that the learners could go on looking for the gaps in their learning. So I think these 5 steps are the very important steps if any parent or any student is very much interested into this idea of alternate schooling or homeschooling. They should focus on these 5 steps. And regarding the pressures you mentioned, I think first thing I would refer to Imam Ali Islam saying that if you are feeling scared of something, just jump on it. So first formula is this: if you are convinced for something and you are scary because it is an alternate model and not that much common in our society, first thing is that you should research on it, prepare your mind, and then jump on it. First thing is this. Second is the house chores, how to handle our household, especially for the mothers who are at home, how to handle those households and go on working on the other things as well. I would say that initially you have to keep an eye on your kids so that they make their routines. And once, let's say for 6 months, if this thing happens, then the kids' interests are in their studies, and then they are at the driving seat of their own learning. So when they are the driver, then you don't need to bother. So you can sit with them at the end of the week and discuss for 2 to 3 hours, discuss the learning. Plus, they should have some logs, standard formats of notes taking, and all those things which you can go through after at the end of the day or at the end of the week to just I mean, not in the case, not in the perspective of a police sort of a thing, that you're policing their learning. As a facilitator, because we are elders, we have some experiences, so why not to sit with you to see what problems you are facing, and every kid has his or her own problems. So the parents or the facilitators should understand for example, if a child has a concentration span problem, so we should not expect a perfect sort of a concentration span from him from the very first day. This is what the beauty of this individualized learning is. And if we are not catering to their personal needs, obviously they will get frustrated and the things would get worse. About the future, I can very easily assure you that the future is not that much limited to the universities and the job sort of commercial market, or what you call it, the corporate sector, because the world is opening a lot now. These sort of tools like I mean, social media tools and YouTube and these sort of, even if a person has a capability in him or her, and they can showcase their capability, the world is there to offer them millions and millions. So even the kids, the young people of 20s are earning in millions now these days. So I think we should not fear about this thing, because the nature of the market is going to be very much changed when these kids would be in their practical life. That some of the jobs will be totally swiped out, and there will be some more new jobs which we can't even go on imagining at the moment. So this was my take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reza bhai. So, Mohsin bhai, what are your thoughts on some of the points Reza bhai has made? And because we are also heading towards the end of the show as well. So, when a child is under 7, it's very important for them to observe the nature, live in the nature, for instance, like learning from their personal touch and taste and smell and things like that, instead of touch phones and stuff like that. So this is also very important. So after the age of 8, for example, 8 to 16, you can say, what kind of skill set is very, very important you think we can introduce and help them learn, and what are your thoughts on that, like how to groom a child in a sensible, organized, disciplined adult who understand their own personal need, and they understand what are their, for instance, future goals, because this is the time when children are like of this mindset, and that's how in high schools also they do these kind of activities which help them self-aware and go for the things they want to do and they are passionate about and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that, of course, we've highlighted, and Raza has also highlighted this, that creativity and allowing the imagination to be free, to be able to think freely and to create and to be able to imagine. This is very important. This is a tool. It's a tool that they will use in their future to invent things, to make things, to produce things, to adapt to environments, and also to be able to have a dream, have a vision, to be visionaries, not just to be followers and functionaries and people who are just, capping the T's and dotting the I's, but actual leaders and thinkers and people who evolve and takes humanity somewhere. They lead in that process. So creativity is very important in that, to nurture the imagination and creativity. Logic and rationality is very important. Of course, that includes analogical reasoning, and so the reasoning skills. If you've given them, I think, these two things in particular, and underpinned it with an ability to understand what ethics and morality is from a divine perspective. So to be able to give them, partly by modeling it yourself, but also by understanding the theory of ethics and morality from a prophetic perspective, and to see the examples of how it was enacted, particularly in the Khilafat of Imam Ali alayhi salam, or in the Ahlul Bayt circles. I think this is very important. If you give them these three things, these are the tools, these are skills, these are the weapons or the implements they'll use to solve problems and to create a future which is not one of slavery or following, but one which is going to shape the future. So I think this is important. But at the same time, what I have to bemoan is that obviously since the demise of the Islamic world as an economic power or as a sort of a thinking power, since our leaderships by and large capitulated to Western colonialism and subsequently sort of US imperialism, we've been importing products, we've been copying and pasting, and we've been sadly reproducing at best, doing reproduction culture, even in education. So it's not about going back to the Ottoman era and looking at what they did necessarily to get to copy and paste what they did, or copy and paste it. It's about coming up with well-researched content curriculums. So the content within a curriculum, even in a homeschooling curriculum, what would be great for a parent is if there were toolkits, if there was a resource, a set of resources that were ready-made. And okay, those might not be everything they use, but certainly if we knew that those resources were created by imaginative young people, imaginative teachers, people who have a grasp of education from several angles and also understand Islamic philosophy of education, then of course what we'll come up with is a resource pool we can point the children to, we can point the parents to make it a little easier for them in case they're struggling to go out there and find things which are very important. So I think this supporting of parents and supporting of the hubs that start emerging with this homeschooling and the support for the children to be able to signpost them to really high quality imaginatively put together toolkits, curriculums, possibilities, resources. I think that really would also help a lot. It would give certainly one solid option to parents, and especially for those parents who are too busy to research and to go and find and do things. It would be a great asset. At the moment, I don't think we have very high quality resources. Of course, that's down to investment, and it's down to money that's invested in, first of all, putting together teams that can go and do this. So I think we need to invest in an educational think tank, in an educational research process, bringing in people like Brother Reza and others in the field, the leading people within the field who have great thoughts on this, and to try and commission them to do the research. And you can't do this voluntarily, because to do research, to build up these resources, you need ideally government support, or sort of state funding or some kind of large-scale benefactors to back such a process. But I honestly think that we've got one bedrock at the moment, which we can say is becoming independent. You see, all of our education establishments were inherited from the West and from Britain, and we still go back to them to fill us up. Cambridge Board Education or Pearson's. You look at these big transnational corporations; they dominate even our world in terms of the content and the resources, and especially resources which are visual, which are audio-visual, which are engaging, which set out things for teachers. You see, the teachers themselves or the parents themselves may need toolkits, and they may need help in structuring and the kids themselves. I mean, I like Brother Ali Reza's idea of children self-structuring and learning to take responsibility as well. But I think I also like the idea of a well-researched resource pool, so that if I want to go onto YouTube, there could be a one-stop shop. I once did something for Edison Learning, I think, which was to do with the three faiths. So, for instance, we picked on 11-year-olds and their knowledge about the Abrahamic faiths. And the idea was to help them all to understand the Abrahamic faith. There was a specific target group for which we wanted to build a resource. So the resource was a website plus a teacher, a curriculum, a 6-week course. And the idea was that this course would link to the website, and the children would be able to go onto this the website and explore themselves, voluntarily. They could go on and find out what Islam taught about clothes, or what Christianity taught about XYZ, whether it was to do with belief or any other thing. So they could quickly go and use these resources. So rather like they do on the internet anyway, when they're doing their entertainment research or whatever, their entertainment sides of things, they would naturally navigate these tools. But instead of having to search the entire web, there ought to be some portal which can give them a sort of a one-stop beginning, an indicator, and at least be able to provide that. But it has to be high quality, it has to be well resourced, it has to be slickly done, it has to have content which is well thought out and engaging and enhances the imagination, the creativity, and develops skills. And that becomes a support tool. It's like a support resource, and you can still have your individualism and your freedom in the way you're teaching children. But again, rather like the hub, that becomes a backup resource which is screened, tested by well qualified contemporary thinkers. I mean, I also like at the further education level, I like the idea of breaking the old madrasa system, so that even when we teach ulama, for instance, and they are sent to a madrasa and all they do is learn those religious sciences, that's also problematic, because you manufacture ulama, for instance, who go into a special environment, only learn about religious sciences. How will they apply that to the real world? They can't. When they come out, everything they learned was an atmosphere in which they were divorced from real world problems, real world society. So their education was limited to books, scholasticism, the religious sciences. How you then apply that in the real world, how you apply that to governance, towards shaping society, towards creating new solutions of an Islamic kind, you can't, because you've lived in isolation. What ought to happen is something like, for instance, Tehran University, for instance, and this is what Ayatollah Mutahiri and Dr. Ali Shariati actually discussed and were beginning to develop. And Ayatollah Mutahiri was the classic example of it, where he went and started engaging with secular sciences, secular education systems, and he also had the religious education system in hand, but he had the intellect to be able to go and start getting the best of both worlds and begin to merge them. Because what you want is a child to emerge which balances the spiritual and his divine and that side of his world with, of course, his physical and his intellectual and his emotional development as well. The things cannot be divorced. You need all of it. So I would advocate that we, as a community, as people who are investors in the community, the richest people in our society, the ordinary people, we need to put our hands on our pockets, first of all, towards financing and commissioning an inquiry team, a research body, which has a lot of the best thinkers in education coming together, and they go embark on this research and this development and starting to move towards a really comprehensive, modern, contemporary, yet traditionally rooted and divinely rooted set of resources, basically.
Thank you so much, Mohsin Bhai. Just last 2 minutes are left. If you want to conclude, Brother Raza, I would appreciate if you can conclude. If you want to add anything, just 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. Reiterate the point that alternative education is a very powerful tool for all the oppressed people of the world. Because, from whichever religious denomination they are, if they are subjected to oppression, they should go on opting this tool of alternate education, because it makes the learning very much decentralized, and their agendas are very much neutralized when this education is decentralized. At the same time, by making the hubs, the idea which Mohsin Bhai shared, the same oppressors can go on developing a very good network in between them. So when they want to hit against some agenda, they will be like a fist and will be a power. And when there is an agenda or the thrust of the oppressor's agenda on them, they can go on neutralizing them, that agenda, by becoming very much decentralized. So it works both the ways, and I think this is a very, very good approach which the oppressed people should learn and this approach can make them come in power again, which the promise which Allah has did in the Quran, and will help us hasten the zaroor of Imam Zaman alayhi salatu wasalam as well.
Inshallah.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much, Reza bhai. Thank you so much, Mohsin bhai. I'm really honored to have you both on the show on this significant topic. And I'll take a leave now from the viewers. It was for today, and inshallah, we'll see you next week. Allah Hafiz.